Is blood really thicker than water? We'll find out next, right here on The Right Stuff. You are listening to the best, the only place to be on Tuesday night. That's right, you're listening to The Right Stuff, and you're at the right place at the right time. From England to Canada, from Detroit to the Poconos, we are showcasing Christian authors worldwide, giving you tips, tools, techniques, and resources for you, the writer, to hone and perfect your craft. Tune in every Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time right here on WPJC 104.5. And your host, Parker J. Cole. Hi, and welcome to the show for this wonderful edition of The Right Stuff. I'm your host, Parker J. So glad you're able to join me as we talk about blood mercy, thicker than water. And I can't wait to just dig down deep into this new book by a returning guest, Janine Ippolito. But we'll be talking to her in just a few moments. As always, I want to thank you for your support of my books, Many Strange Women, The Other Man, Vengeful Vows, the entire Sins of the Flesh series, which is available online at Amazon or at my publisher site, alexiapublishing.com, or wherever books are sold. Just want to thank you all for your support of The Right Stuff. Like I mentioned before, the PJC Media family is growing. We have 2 new shows coming on board the network. The first show is called The Marriage Playbook with coaches Eric and Fran Harrison, and the next show is called Let's Talk About It with Jenny White, where she showcases and talks about the special needs community in, out, and about it, all about it, from churches to schools, from loved ones to the police, and how they respond to special needs. We're going to be talking all about it with Jenny White. So stay tuned for November for 2 dynamic new shows coming on board the PJC Media Worldwide Network. I'm so glad you guys are with me to see the network grow. You guys make it all possible. So thank you so much for all your support. If you want to weigh in on our topic, you certainly can by calling in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air. Or you can hit me on Twitter at Parker J. Cole, #RightStuff with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guests on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
God gives humans the gift of making amazing stories to glorify Him. At speculativefaith.com, our ministry is to help fans explore fantasy, science fiction, supernatural stories, and beyond from an intentional and biblical Christian perspective. We share daily articles and have extensive archives tackling hot topics like end times beliefs, the art of writing, creative excellence in the Christian subcultures, discernment, sex, magic, Harry Potter, and space aliens and the Bible. If you are a parent or anyone else with a discriminating palate, our reviewers explore fantastical novels, movies, television, and games in light of God's beauty, goodness, and truth. Want to find Christian stories? The Spec Faith Library lists every fantastical novel we can find from a Christian author. It's all part of our mission to discern, engage, and enjoy fantastical human creativity in honor of our Creator, Jesus Christ. SpeculativeFaith.com, exploring fantastical stories for God's glory.
Jesus said, "Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. Freely you received, freely give." Listen to our internet radio station at touchofgodradio.org, where you will find out your true identity in Christ. You can use the light that is within you to replace the darkness in this world. Go into all the world today with touchofgodradio.org.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff. Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to The Right Stuff here on WPJC 104.5. The queen of Tuesday nights is here, Parker J. Thank you so much for joining me. We are going to be talking about blood mercy, thicker than water. And the question I asked you before the show began was this: is blood really thicker than water? We'll be talking about that with my wonderful returning guest co-host and contributor today, Janine Ippolito. Janine, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, and I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad to have you here as well, Janine. You know, I just raved about your book, Writing from the Inside Out. You talk world building. I totally enjoyed it the last time you were with us. We talked about that book. And now you're here with your first fiction offering that I just can't wait to just sink my teeth into, pun truly intended. So I'm really glad about that. Really glad about that. So I'm here with you. And I just want people to know, you know, those who missed the show before, tell us who you are in your own words.
Okay, well, I am a reader, I'm a writer, I'm an author, I'm a teacher, a book reviewer, and I also am the fearless leader of Uncommon Universes Press, which is a science fiction and fantasy press that features world building, struggles of good and evil, really quirky, misfit characters. And I also don't sleep very much all the time because I'm doing everything else, but I have fun doing it, so that's okay with me. And I guess for the purposes of the show, my biggest confession is to date is yes, I actually do enjoy vampires and the vampire mythology. And I had a blast writing this book with my co-writer, Julia Busco, and so I'm really excited to be here and talk about it.
You know what? I totally feel you about vampires. However, I think I've said this 1,000 times on this show. Twilight killed it for me. So I love my vampires. I do. And Twilight killed it for me. But if it didn't kill it for you, Janine, I'm happy for you.
I can't bear. I mocked it so much, and everyone was like, okay, you know, you have to read it to make fun of it. I'm like, okay, you know what? I will, just to show you. So I did. And, you know, it wasn't some parts, especially book 2, is kind of like, okay, this is, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this, but I said I would, so I'm going to go for it. And in terms of like the writing and stuff, it got better as it went on, and she had a lot of interesting world building concepts she got into by the end. But I would just have to say, it's not my personal cup of tea, and I wasn't really in its market. Like that wasn't really written for someone like me to read.
Right.
But
I like my vampires a little more mature. I won't let.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna be.
Me too. I'm not quite a reader of YA stuff all the time with that, so it got a little bit too.
Too
moody for me.
I think I got a little angsty. I'm like, oh my gosh, how many love stories can it possibly be in one book? And I love love stories. I write romance.
Yeah, I do
love
too,
love stories. And so it's like, oh my gosh, help me. But no more ragging on her. I mean, she's made her success, and more power to her and all that good stuff. But I like how you say you like vampires. And, this whole month on The Right Stuff, we've been showcasing speculative fiction. And with speculative fiction, I wanted people to know that Christians do write speculative fiction, and we have all sort of ideas about it, And so you mentioned about you loving vampires. I couldn't help but remember when I was a kid, when vampires were real hot back then, and how the vampires had this seductive allure, and you wanted to be a vampire, but they were evil. Whereas nowadays, they're just misunderstood people. And I'm like, no, they're evil. Go back to being evil. That was the whole point.
Yeah. So, I am totally with that. Yeah.
I'm like, go back to being. I liked you evil because then you were something to conquer. So me being with you was something that shouldn't happen. I mean, I don't accept the darkness. You don't accept it. You try to fight against it. And I think that's kind of like a cultural trend going on right now, where you have the things that were normally known as dark being accepted more, and things that are normally known as good being not accepted because the dark is so much more seductive than the light, if you want to put it metaphorically. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I would agree, especially to a certain extent. It's the idea that everyone is just a misfit, and everyone sort of, had a hard life, and there's no excuse for there's excuses for their actions, and maybe it's okay if they're if they're dark, if they do like 1 or 2 good things a year or something. And I definitely do see that, like the rise of like the very, very dark anti-hero.
Yeah.
And with vampires especially, when Julie and I tackled this and we started talking about it, because we met being both, people who really were into the lore and everything, we were like, you know what, we want there to be consequences. We want there to be like, let's keep the allure because that's part of the mythology. But let's also put in, the consequences. Let's put in the issues. Let's make it, like, less appealing to be a vampire because really in the end, like, it's pretty repulsive. They're sucking people's blood. That's not cool. That's not awesome. That's not sexy. That's called homicide. So
yeah, if it was anyone else, it'd be
putting
homicide.
Things about perspective and showing both the allure and everything, and showing like people fighting against that, but also showing that it really is like a really dark, gross. Look, it's a really gross thing. Like whether or not you're a Christian, that's just like ew. That's not the way you want a date to go. That's not a thing.
No, it's interesting you say that. I was watching, I don't know if you know, I can't think of the guy's name. He does like extreme foods, and he was in some tribal culture. And in the tribal culture, they actually drank the blood of cows. And so they would pierce the cow's neck, and it would come out, and they would drink it. But then what the kids of this tribal culture would do would put the blood into this container and take a stick and go very, 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 very fast with it, and it would either heat it up or clump up the blood, and they would eat it like that. And I'm going, oh gosh, So I mean, I could deal with eating the bugs and stuff, but I'm not drinking blood, But that's what the culture did, and so it's very funny how you mentioned that, because in any other world, this wouldn't be a great thing to do. That's what I mean,
Yeah, it was just kind of one of those things that kind of stuck with us. And so when we were making the mythology, because we're like, okay, we want to reinvent this. We want to take it from a very, very different angle. And we had some skeptics like, how can you do a different angle on vampires? For crying out loud, they've sparkled now. There's nothing more you can do.
Right.
And we said, let's go back. We tried a bunch of different things that ended up being different stories that didn't really apply to this one. But then we went for the idea of, let's go with science. Let's research anemia. Let's look at actual blood drinking. Let's see people who actually drank blood, why they did it, what's the effect on the human system, and why would people in the first place be driven to do that? And that's when I discovered that some people who had anemia before there was blood transfusion, so had really severe anemia, would actually drink blood, because they were just so desperate to get iron and everything, and our bodies aren't designed to take in that. We're not designed to get nutrients. But it was just a fascinating place to start from that, from a sense of desperation and a sense of these being people who are outcast and nowhere else to go, deciding to do this, and then saying, okay, if people were that desperate, what do people do when they're desperate? What do people do when they're feeling outcast? And kind of exploring the concept of a misfit, but saying these people, they took it way too far with that. And just, in kind of deconstructing that whole idea of, the glamorized misfit as, this is really hard. Yeah, I understand it, but it's still not a good idea. And you can't dominate others because you were born with this sickness. It doesn't work that way.
It's interesting because when you talk about, there's a lot of things that happen with people when they talk about blood. And I know we're probably inordinately talking about blood, but this is the whole point about vampirism. It's all about blood. And lots of it, for that matter. Blood symbolizes a lot of things. It symbolizes life. It symbolizes a death. It symbolizes a lot of different things. So when you talk about blood, you have to kind of go into what does blood do. And I like how you put that scientific nugget into the whole vampire lore. I think that makes a lot of sense, because then you can start to divorce the allure of these things and start to see more from a critical standpoint. And I was also thinking about how blood. There was, I know you know the story about that. I think she was a queen or a lady from back in the Middle East who she was a serial killer, and she killed all these women and bathed in their blood because she wanted to look young. And she had her servants do it too. I don't know how many women she killed, like hundreds of women, because she wanted to look young. And so there is this connotation in fiction and in real life about this obsession with blood. Where do you think that comes from? Is it just pointing back to how Christ's blood saves us? Is it pointing back to just this inordinate connection with blood? What do you think it is?
Well, I mean, that's where part of the life is. And I think people realize, really early on in life that, if you lose that, you die.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, in biblical times, blood was, the first blood was spilled when to clothe Adam and Eve. And there were many different instances of blood used in the Bible. And I think that is a very strong tradition that carries through. And then whether different cultures were aware of that at the time, it's still it's essential, and they would have figured out that if you slice this open, it's going to go out. And they would also have figured out that maybe this has something to do with making you stronger. Certainly, when you're in the height of adrenaline and stuff, and your blood rushes to you, they probably had a lot of different connotations with that. And if you're going from a scientific perspective as well as a cultural perspective, they were just trying to observe what was going on there. And if they noticed that blood, did certain things at certain times, or you felt certain ways when you were excited or you were angry or something, then they would try to make sense of that any way they could. And so it's always had a really strong connotation with life and with power and with strength and, killing the blood of the enemies. And so I just think it's this really fascinating, evocative concept that can be used for all these different ways and is always relevant because, hey, we all have it and we all need it. So
yeah, if we don't have our blood, no school tomorrow, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we won't be going to school. The kids may be like, oh, this rocks. Oh, wait, I'll be dead? Oh, we don't want that. So I totally feel you that. And I talk about that because on the other side of the break, we're going to be talking about the relationship of blood and why we often use the term blood is thicker than water. We often use that term, but sometimes when we use that proverb that we've heard, I don't know how many times, Janine, down through the years, you hear it so often, but oftentimes that gets flipped on its head. And I know that's going to be totally essential to your book, Blood and Mercy, Thicker Than Water. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick short break, and when we come back, we're talking to Janine. If you want to weigh in on our topic, you certainly can by calling in at 646-668-8485, and then press 1 to be live on air. Hit me on Twitter at ParkerJCole, #RightStuff. With your questions and comments. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guests on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Question: if you write a book, everybody will rush out to buy it. Obvious answer: no. If you were a celebrity or if you had a huge marketing budget, then maybe you can get a lot of exposure for your book. Another solution would be to check out joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com is a promotion and marketing service with access to over 1/3 followers on Twitter. joeytweets.com has 3 packages available to fit any budget. That's joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com. Get some serious exposure for your books.
Engaging the culture's imagination through speculative fiction, the Untold Podcast produces audio fiction from a Christian worldview. Find us over at untoldpodcast.com, where we partner with authors to tell science fiction, fantasy, supernatural, and horror stories. Find links at untoldpodcast.com to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, and a variety of other platforms. Each month we produce high-quality audio fiction that's free to download and free to listen. Our submissions are open, and we're always looking to add another great story to over 24 hours of narrative entertainment. Find all of our audio fiction over at www.untoldpodcast.com.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff. Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to The Right Stuff here on WPJC 104.5. So glad you are here. We have been having just one of those icky but wonderful discussions about blood and talking about how it relates to vampire and vampire lore and stuff like that, and just our own morbid interest in vampires, because I totally feel you, Janine, about having that interest in vampires. When I was a teenager, I remember having weird thoughts like I want to be a vampire and stuff like that. And I remember even writing a poem about being a vampire. To this day, I remember the name of the poem, and it was called When the Vampire Drinks. I must have been like 14, 15 years old.
Wow. And
I submitted it in a class thing, and one of the kids' mom read it, and I saw her hand go to her throat like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with this girl? Is this the preacher's daughter? One of those numbers writing about vampires. So I totally understand the lore of the darker things in life. It's almost like there's the overarching realm. It's not even like vampires. It could be zombies. It could be monsters. But it's that lore of the dark that is just so fascinating to some of us. Even though we hardly seek the light, we can't help but some of us be fascinated by the dark. And I think with this month being toward Halloween and stuff like that, people are getting ready to go see scary movies. They're getting ready to go to haunted houses. They're getting ready to be freaked out. They're going to do some strange things because we like the dark. We're attracted to the dark. And I think with speculative fiction, especially darker speculative fiction, I think we have the opportunity to probe those type of things in speculative fiction. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I would agree with you with, like, when I was a teenager, my big thing that got into vampires actually was I was part of an online storytelling group, role-playing where you told different stories. And it was really free form. It was sort of Tolkien and sort of vampires and sort of this, and we all just kind of got together with these big mashup stories on this online message board. And I was friends with someone who wrote about vampires a lot, and she used based off of this one actual role-playing game she knew. She just used all their stuff. And I got really interested in, again, the world-building side of it. I was like, ooh, look, there's different kinds of vampires and different things. And that was the first one that interested me because there were side effects. And I'm always interested in sort of that part of it. Everyone kind of talks about the Lord and these all-powerful things, and I guess I'm sort of one of those skeptics, and the first time I hear about someone all-powerful, I'm like, no, you're not. There's got to be someone to bring you down. No, you're not. And so I researched that, and I actually, I created a couple of vampire characters just for the purpose of trying to say, okay, how can I tweak them and poke them to show that, these are, it's not all it's cracked up to be, that it is difficult to do this, that you don't really want to be this. Yes, it's alluring, but you don't really want to live this way. And I was always interested in that kind of dynamic of how people can be drawn to something that's so destructive. And that's one of the themes that we have in the Blood Mercy series is in the modern days, people who have this condition, they don't need to drink blood. They aren't desperate. They can get transfusions. There are places where you can do that. But there's still this allure for them to want to try and do that. And humanity's tendency to try to be interested in these destructive things and to have this allure of darkness is just one thing that Julia Busco and I were really interested in exploring and seeing how that played out in different ways.
Now, we talk about that quote that I mentioned before the break. We talk about blood being thicker than water. And when we say this, I don't think we actually mean it in the physical sense, unless you can correct me. I don't know if we mean it in the physical sense. Cause
I actually did some research on that.
Okay, educate me, please.
Okay, so the quote's actually been distorted. The quote is, its blood is thicker than water, which is part of the evocativeness of the title. And we think of it now as in family is, more important than anything else. Your family, your genetics, your blood, which does play out over the course of this book series because it does follow different families and different family ties and things like that. But when I researched it, the original was actually talking about blood on the battlefield. And it was talking about how when comrades went into battle and spilled blood together, that battlefield bond was stronger than anything else, which actually also fits the book because there's lots of battles and there's lots of fights and things like that. And there's lots of examples of people becoming like family through working together, and lots of instances of people who are family, but it doesn't work out. One's on the dark side, one's on the light side, one does this, one does that. And so those clashes and that definition of what does it mean to have family.
I think I totally agree with you there. And I can actually see how that would work on the battlefield because you're in such a intense moment. I mean, you got enemies coming at you left and right, and the only person you can depend on is the person behind you who got your back, and that's how I always think about those fight scenes in movies and in epic books, how the two people are back-to-back fighting. I mean, you can feel each other's sweat popping off, and you're back-to-back, and that's thicker than anything else. I totally understand that. But we often do think about with family because bloodlines do connect us. Bloodlines connect us, and bloodlines keep us familial, keep us all in the same thing. If I have blood, my twin sister, for example, needs my blood, I can give her my blood. And that's something that you can't always have, And so totally understand that.
And so just again, the book tries to explore those different things and what family looks like and what it looks like to have, families through adversity and what it looks like to be loyal to family and what it looks like when things don't work out with the bloodlines and people pull on loyalties that you can't, that can't be maintained because, well, I'm not going to go into any more. You need to read the book, but it has some really interesting things to say about that. So.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm so intrigued to get into this book because we've been talking a lot about it, just going around it. So you know what? Let's go ahead and delve into Blood Mercy. Go ahead and tell us what it is about.
Okay, so this is first novella in this series, and the next one will probably be a little bit longer because we're going to get involved more into the mythology of it and really get into the world and see things escalate. But it features Melrose Durante, who is an ancient healer from Egypt. He's 2,500 years old, and he has something called the blood curse. And the blood curse is the type of like super hyper crazy anemia that can lead to vampirism because that's how you can solve it. But he actually chose a different route. He went the route of science, and he chose to come up with the idea of blood transfusions way earlier than anyone else, and to try to unite people to not give in to their savage side. And so in this current book, he's with his, I think he's with his grand godson. He's with his godson. And he's encounters this vampire woman who just like attacks his godson and tries to like kill him and everything. And he realizes this woman is in fact his lost wife, and who he has been searching for years. And she just disappeared. And what happened was she was captured by the evil vampires and turned into a vampire and had all these horrible things happen to her. She doesn't remember her own name. She remembers him sporadically, but she's screaming incoherently. And the one thing she says is that Quebec City is where they're currently is in Quebec City. She's like, it's going to fall in 5 days. And so he has these multiple layers where he's trying to figure out what's wrong with his wife because he cares about her and he hasn't seen her in a couple of years. But he's also trying to figure out what's going on in her head and how he can stop this brutal massacre of everyone in the city. And so it's got like a double-layered race against the clock feel. And the added perk in that is that not everyone else around him knew he was married. So
right,
lots of fun little reveals there, and difficulties as he's just trying to figure out how to reach his wife, both for his own personal sake and for her sake, but also to save this city.
No, that's going to be a fun read. I can always tell. I already have my copy, just haven't had a chance to pick it up yet, but I am just excited to be reading it because of the fact that you're dealing with this, immortal, and he's trying to almost divorce himself from the curse of being a vampire, of this disease. He's trying to divorce himself from it and make it seem as if it isn't as bad by doing scientific research. But I almost think that part of your book you'll be discussing how people just don't want to go the safe route. Would I be right in saying that?
Very much so, and that comes up in this book some, and it comes even more in future books. A lot of people, he offers his alternative. He says, just because you're, one of our taglines for the series is, being born cursed doesn't make you a monster. You don't have to give in to this. But a lot of people, for various reasons, do it anyway, to get power, because they felt victimized, because they like the taste of blood, and they don't want to choose to abstain. They don't want to get transfusions or anything. They want to go that route. And so it's definitely exploring the temptation of that darkness that's inside of all these people who have this illness.
It's interesting because when you say being cursed doesn't make you a monster, but there's still consequences with the curse. And that's why he's trying to give him an alternative. You don't have to feed into that. It's almost as if you're doing, I know you're talking about the book and the fictional aspect, but I could totally see this being for people who, like me, aren't vampires, who are just dealing with our own issues and our own curses of our own minds, wouldn't you say?
That's very much a place that we came at when we went into this, because Julie and I both come from, everyone has their own life experiences, everyone has their own things they've had to work through. And over the years, you see how challenging that is, and how two people will go through similar circumstances. One person comes out, this way and comes out stronger, and the other person comes out and they're a disaster. And looking through that and seeing what people cling to try to, when things get really, really bad and dark or difficult, or there's difficult circumstances, what do people turn to? What do people turn into? And the different paths people can take. So we're very conscious of that kind of story that you can tell through this. And in that way it is, relatable beyond just, it's a vampire story. this is a story that's reflecting life. I mean, we all know what it's like to have something where you feel like, something happened to you that you couldn't, you didn't ask for, and how do you deal with that?
I find it interesting that you say that, because I had another author on the show who did a vampire story called Blood for Blood by Ben Wolfe, and I thoroughly enjoyed the story. And he used this thing about vampires in a similar fashion, as far as like making it something that you really don't want to have. You have it. In his book, you're stuck with it, and it's not a good thing. It controls you, all this other kind of stuff. And I like how you guys have that similarity, because you kind of put the realism back into the darkness, because the darkness can be so seductive and so alluring, and it covers everything. You can't be seen, all this other kind of stuff, and you put the reality back into it with that. So I'm really excited about the book. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. When we come back, we'll be taking your questions and comments, so call in at 646-668-8485, and then press 1 to be live on air, or hit me on Twitter at Parker J. Cole, #RightStuff, with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guests on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Have you read the latest issue of Sormag Digital, the award-winning literary magazine for multicultural readers and writers? Sormag Digital is available quarterly and showcases interviews with the best authors in multicultural literature. Sormag Digital features craft and business articles for those interested in writing. If you're looking for a good book, check out our book reviews on what's hot in multicultural literature. For writers looking for new readers to get in front of, Sormag Digital is the perfect place to introduce your book. We offer advertising spaces that fit your promotional budget. Get your free subscription on sormag.com or order a print issue on magcloud.com. If you would like more information about Sormag Digital, check us out on sormag.com or contact us at sormag@yahoo.com. Sormag Digital is the magazine for multicultural readers and writers.
Are you a reader looking for more compelling Christian fiction? Maybe something a little more edgy or a bit more real? Are you tired of most Christian fiction shying away from the truth and settling for a rose-tinted view of the world and its issues? Or are you an author who has a compelling story to tell, but you're afraid it doesn't jive with today's brand of Christian or secular fiction? Are you tired of Christian publishers telling you that your content is too edgy? Or maybe you've tried submitting your content under the radar to secular publishers only to be told your themes are a bit too religious. We invite you to take a look at the Crossover Alliance. We are an online publishing company that specializes in edgy Christian speculative fiction with Christian themes and real-world content. Our company is formed from authors and readers just like you who are breaking into the mainstream and Christian markets with this compelling genre. Head over to the www.thecrossoveralliance.com for all the details on who we are, what we do, and what we accept. Right now, if you sign up for our email newsletter, you'll receive a free digital copy of our first short story anthology. Check us out today and help us spread the word about the Crossover Alliance, where light shines brighter in the darkness.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff. Hi, and welcome back. This is The Right Stuff, and you're at the right place with the right host, Parker J. So glad you are here with me. Like I said before, this whole month we'll be talking about Christian speculative fiction and Christians who are writing speculative fiction. I just want to give a shout out to our supporters of The Right Stuff, the Untold Podcast, and Crossover Alliance, who present wonderful Christian speculative fiction works via podcast and publishing. So shout out to Crossover Alliance and the Untold Podcast. Appreciate what you guys are doing. And then, Janine, I also appreciate what you're doing with your publishing company, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later on in the broadcast, Uncommon Universes, and what you're doing. I'm looking forward to a partnership with you just to get the word out more about Christian spec fiction, the Christians who write spec fiction. We did get a question. We got a question from Deborah in Sweetwater, Florida. Deborah says, I'm excited about the show. I'm currently reading Blood Mercy. What sparked the idea for this story? It is very unique. Deborah, thank you so much for your question. Janine?
Okay, so that one was actually sparked by, again, my friend Julie Busco and I. We came together about 3 or 4 years ago, and we realized we both liked vampires, and we just literally started talking about stories and talking about these different characters and what we'd love to see in stories that hadn't been done yet. And with vampires, we were like, well, you know what? We'd love to see well, one of the first things we actually went around is like, could you be a vampire and a Catholic at the same time? Because usually, the Catholic Church and other churches are against vampires. And that was kind of our first question that we kind of played around with. And, how would that work? And what would it work if someone who was a believer, became a vampire? How would you handle that? And going through the different mythologies and seeing how different things interpreted it, like if you became a vampire, you lost your soul, or whether, it became this all-powerful urge, or you became more animal-like. And we're like, we kind of want to play around with this. We want to see how you can test people out here. We want to see what would happen if you took somebody who was a believer, and, especially in classic vampire lore, you have a lot about, Catholic symbols and the cross symbols and holy water having power over vampires. And we're like, well, wouldn't that be awful if you had somebody who was a Catholic who got turned into a vampire against their will and wanted to confess, but, because of the symbols they couldn't, and then we're like, well, that would change the whole vampire lore, because that would mean that it was something that was more physical that you could fight against instead of being something that was 100%, spiritual, where it just tainted your soul. And we kind of went from there, and actually the first prologue of the book is called A Vampire's Confession. And I wrote that a couple years ago based on our conversations. It just kind of came out one night, and I showed it to my husband. He was like, this is really interesting, because you're talking about something that people have never taken it from this angle before. They've never tried to say, well, what if it was a physical thing, but, and you didn't really want to have it, but you had to fight against it anyway. And I was like, well, you know what? One tie-in we had with that, and something else we brought into the vampire concept, was the idea of mental illness, chronic illness, all these physical conditions that can change who someone is, but they don't really ask for. And we saw that as a great metaphor to kind of put in there. And then from there, it just kind of exploded and went through about, oh goodness, this thing's been through about 3 or 4 or 5, maybe about 10 drafts to get refined to where it is. But exploring that concept of what happens when this thing kind of drops on you, what happens when you don't ask for this to happen? Is there a possibility, and is there a hope to fight against it? And we wanted to show that there could be. That's one of the reasons we wrote that. We wanted to show that, there could be a hope in the darkness, that you don't have to give in to things, partly as a way of encouragement.
And then we do have a caller calling in. We have Joanna calling in from Rochester Hills, Michigan. Joanna, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. Do you have a question or comment for our guest?
Well, it's more of a comment. I do have to say that it comes from a very different place. As vampire and Christianity combined, it's very unique. I appreciate that uniqueness. I was thinking also, you actually had just said it, the encouragement part is what makes the difference, I also, when I was thinking about the actual idea about a vampire and Christianity, being involved, being together, I was thinking, if so many people who are doing so many bad things and feel they can't be delivered, or there is no escape from the horrors of their darkness, whatever their demons or whatever that may be, if they could read this book, I'm sure they would be very enlightened. I just want to say kudos for the original idea. It's very, very unique, and I can't wait to read it. I think I really am going to buy this one and see what it's about. Thanks so much for having my comment on the show.
Joanna, thank you so much for joining in the conversation. Janine, you want to respond?
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. That's really encouraging to hear, because that is something that Julia Bosco and I really want to distill on this a lot, is the idea of hope in the darkness. And we're never the kind, we joke about, we like vampires, we like, writing about zombies, and we do find it really interesting. But we always want to show the hope in the darkest of places. We always want to go to those places to show that there is a way out of it, and that there is a future, even if it's really, really hard to see. And it's worth fighting for that, and it's worth not giving up for that. And so that was just really encouraging to hear. So, yeah, thank you for commenting.
I'm glad to say that, because it really shows, too, that Christians, that I think we need these type of stories, because there are so many people attracted to the dark, and the dark gets more credibility, if I can use the term loosely. They're trying to say if you're a good person, you really aren't a good person. For example, you're really just misunderstood, you're just a misfit. And so we begin to excuse the darkness and not call it dark. We call it light, and it's not. And so what happens, I think, is that some Christians, even non-Christians, they get caught up in dark things, and then they find out that the dark really is just the dark. And I'm using that metaphorically, I'm personifying it, but they're starting to find these things out. I know for myself, I was really thinking hard about this because I have a story idea going in my head. But you know how even though you have a story idea, it's really based off a lot of your own experiences, and you use the things that are really important to you. And so you say, how do you show people that just because it looks great and feels great isn't great? Just because it glitters, it isn't gold. Just because it's sexy doesn't mean that it's good for you. You know, how do you do that? And I think with your book, you're really going to help bring so many people into that realization. I know about, like, I think you heard about the, were they the Slender Man killings? I think they were Slender Man. Yeah. I think about that. I think about how so many young people are being drawn into darker occultic things, and they're being touted as just alternative methods, and it's so much worse than what we actually think. And so I hope that if some young person gets this book, even a parent gets this book and reads it, they'll be able to say, you know, even though this is fiction, even though it's about vampires, it can still apply to real life. And I think that's what the relatability comes in at. Now, I got to ask you a question, because you got the title Blood Mercy, Thicker Than Water. What was the genesis behind the title?
Well, Blood Mercy was our first, like we wanted the series to be called Blood Mercy, and we've been calling this project Blood Mercy for years. And it came about the idea of, again, the combination of wanting blood and all these people who were vampires, or then we said, okay, maybe they're not vampires, maybe they're people who could be, but they're kind of in this middle ground, this sort of place where they could be, but they're trying to resist it. And we saw that, you know, blood is a very evocative title, and it had to do with vampires, but then also the idea of mercy and the idea of showing kindness and the idea of trying to seek redemption, trying to seek grace. And so using it from both of those angles, not just in terms of, oh, vampire, evil, but also if you see someone who's kind of in that middle place, who doesn't want to do those things but is being kind of pulled there, that is a play where you reach in and you pull them back the other way. You show them mercy. You show them that kindness. And that's also seen in this book, where there's different houses for different vampire strains. You can have, like, you know, a certain strain of the illness that gives you this issue or that issue. But there was one house that was formed purely as a house of mercy, and its whole sole goal, and it's featured in this book, the sole goal of this house, this organization, is to reach out to people who are vampires and say, you don't have to stay that way. There's another way to do this. You can go through rehabilitation. You don't have to be addicted to blood. You don't have to go through this. And we're going to stick with you until you get all the way out.
What a wonderful, wonderful, subtle way of just exploring all that good stuff. Now, I know the book is on pre-order right now. It's available on pre-order at Amazon.com. But what has been some of the initial responses to Blood Mercy?
They've been really, really positive, which has been a real blessing again. When it's coming out through Uncommon Universes Press, and when we kind of went for this book, we were looking through, okay, this is our first year. We do want to acquire authors, and we're in the process of doing that. But right now, you know, we wanted to kind of put some things out to test the waters, and we're like, this thing is ready first. And we're like, oh, great, we're going to leave with the vampire book. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And we are a press that's aimed for, you know, the whole market, not just Christians. We want to write these great redemptive stories that anybody can read.
Enjoy,
But that was a bit of a challenge, and we put it out there. I had my mom read it, which sounds like it would be really nice, but she's like a really, really, really good reader. Like, she raised me on speculative fiction, so she'll tell me very honestly if it's bad or it's cliche or she's seen it before or anything. She'll tell me, you know, I hope you don't think you're going to publish this because it's not ready.
Right.
And she read it like in 2 hours straight and said, this is the best you've ever written. You know, this concept, you and Julia worked really hard on this, and this is good. And then I just patched on all these early test readers, and they were like, this is fully baked. This is fully cooked. This is a story that needs to go out there. And I think the best thing I've gotten from some people People who like vampires like it because, vampires. But I've gotten a lot of people who's like, how are you getting me to read a vampire book?
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't even like vampires, but I can't stop reading this story. I want more. What are you doing to me?
And that's the most beautiful sounds an author can hear. Those are absolutely beautiful. Like, this is not even my genre, and I can't get out of this book. And I love that. I love that. So when it comes to what people can expect, I know it's a short read, so we look at less than like 100 pages or so. I know it's a short read, and so since you got such a great response pre-release, what are you gonna? What's the next projects then for Blood Mercy? Are you coming out? Are you working on it right now? Is it in hiatus? What's your next projects going?
Yeah, for this particular series, the first one ended up, it's a pretty short novella, which worked better, worked well for all concerns and everything. We really wanted to get people into the world. Because we've been building the story and crafting it over the years, it's pretty much all written in terms of in drafts and in ideas and in thoughts and everything. We know what the next book's going to be like, and now it's just a matter of getting it onto paper. So it's a little like, it's not like starting a fresh book. It's more like we've been playing out. We've got a 4-book arc here going on, so we know exactly where this is all going to end. So the next book is slated to come out no later than May, actually. We want to put these things out a bit quicker than, books normally do, because we want to get people the next installment, which is going to be just as intense and really amp up the stakes even more. And we just finished doing like the full in-depth outline, and we're both just like super excited about this one. So it's called The Darkest Stain.
So let's go ahead and talk about Uncommon Universes real quick. I want people to have an opportunity. I want to send submissions to you. I want people to have an opportunity to talk about that. I want people to at least know about that.
Oh, absolutely. Uncommon Universes Press is a general market press, and that's one thing that we kind of put out there. We like Christian authors. We're fine with you if you're not Christian authors. We know what we publish, we know what we don't publish. And we're very interested in stories that have good world building, first of all. So even this one, we put a lot of work into the different houses and everything. We know everything about this world. We're looking for, creativity and uniqueness. We're looking for kind of compelling characters, especially sort of misfits who are fighting against the system or don't quite fit in with the rest of the world. And we're really interested in compelling stories of good versus evil. We're really interested in people who are dealing with darkness, who are tempted by darkness, or who are an innocent in the middle of the darkness. We want to see those complexities. We want to see character growth. We want to see temptation. We want to see perseverance, and we're fine with seeing failure. We're fine with seeing how it doesn't always work out, and we're fine with showing a broad variety of characters, a broad variety of backgrounds. We like diversity a lot. We have, in this one, Melrose is Egyptian. We have Akira, who is actually Japanese, but he immigrated French. So he's Japanese, but he prefers to speak French, and he lives in Quebec. And all these just different characters with these different backgrounds, and we love seeing all of that. And so we're really passionate about putting our mark on the speculative fiction world in a really redemptive way that makes people look at light and darkness, good and evil, in new and compelling ways.
So if people want to submit, where can they find you online?
uncommonuniverses.com, and we have a full submissions page there, and it gives all the details of what we're looking at. And we are a small press, so we're just starting out. So we don't offer as many perks as the bigger presses, but it's a great way to get your foot in the door. And we're traditional, royalty paying, professional. We have all the ducks in a row, and we're looking forward to an exciting future.
So with Uncommon Universes, you're looking for very compelling stories. So my authors out there, you know what she's looking for. If you want to be a part of it, go to uncommonuniverses.com. You can also follow Janine Ippolito, who is the, I guess you'd say the CEO, the head honcho at Uncommon Universes.
Well, the official word we have two titles. My official title is, it's fearless leader, but it also means I'm the president. I'm the one that's, at the end of the day, I handle all the stuff that's in charge, but I'm aided and abetted by two other awesome business partners, and together we run the whole thing.
And I'm really excited for you. Can't wait to see what's going to happen. You know, like I said, before the show, me and you talked, and I'd love to be just an integral part of just, you know, introducing your authors and giving your authors a platform to discuss their books with and all that good stuff. So looking forward to really solidifying that relationship with you and Uncommon Universes. So, you know, it goes so quickly, Janine, when we talk and have such a great time. It goes so quickly. So we're at the tail end of our show. So what I want you to do is once again give the listeners out there your personal website and your personal social media outlets.
Okay. And I'm also going to toss out that of my co-author, Julia Busco, who I'm excited. She's right now on the road driving up here to hang out, and we're going to do some last-minute things for the launch party, so I'm very excited. You can find me online on Facebook at Janina Polito Writer. You can find me on Twitter at The Quiet Pen. You can find me on Instagram at Janina Polito. And you can find Julia Busco at juliabusco.com, Busko, and you can find me at janinapolito.com. And I'm going to spell that out because it's Janina Polito, JANEENIPPOLITO. And that gets you to both my author site and also my Write Inside Out site, which is more of my writing help site. So, yeah, go online, friend me, check it out. I love talking to people. I'm one of the rare writing extroverts. There's not many of us.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm an extrovert to the T, and I love talking, and I love, you know, really connecting with people. And what I really liked, and for our authors out there who want to hone their craft and get better at what they're writing, I really, really recommend Janine Ippolito's Writing Inside Out, because what she does is instead of you building your world from the mega picture to the minute details, you build it from the inside out. You build the heart first, and then you build the rib cage, the lungs, I guess, and the rib cage and everything else. You really build inside out. And what that does is gives you a very unique way of world building. And for my speculative fiction authors out there, you may want to have this massive world that you want, whether it's scientific fantasy, something in between, but you're not quite sure how to bring all those elements together. Get Janine Ippolito's Inside Out. That book will help you in so many different ways, because instead of looking at the overall picture and then coming down, look at the minute picture, the minute details. When I read it, it just really exploded my mind with possibilities. And sometimes we can really get caught in the big picture. We can't see the details. And this will help you get those details out that are important. That's one thing she helps you do, is if this is important to the story in Inside Out, then use this element. You don't have to have everything, but you have to at least understand how does this impact the story. So it's a wonderful book, also available online at Janine Ippolito. So that's my personal recommendation for Inside Out, Janine. I didn't know if you wanted me to do that, but I was going to do that anyway, because this show is always about providing those resources for authors to hone their craft. So we're at the tail end of our show. And, you know, this show is always about encouraging authors to pick up the pen and use the gift that God gave them to write. So in the few moments that we have left, take about a minute or so, go ahead, encourage those authors out there today.
Okay. All I'm going to say is, no matter how crazy the idea, go for it. I know there's a real, push a lot of times in the world to write for the market, and I'm one of those people that, I'm always trying to be market conscious and everything, and I worked on an idea that I was like, vampires, are you seriously? How am I going to find a market for this? That went out of trend. But you know what? If it's real and if it's from your heart and you pray about it and God wants you to do it, go ahead and write it and see what doors he can open, see where he can go, be willing to submit to his will, be willing to do lots and lots and lots and lots of drafts, and, swallow some pride and, figure things out all over again. But just go out there and write it no matter how crazy it is, because you really don't know where it's going to turn out. And God can use just the craziest things for his glory.
Janine, thank you so much for being with us on the show today. I always enjoy having you and really appreciate your books and your writing and just your advice to us. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Always have fun with Janine Ippolito. She's just a fun, just great person, very exciting, just great energy. You can feel it just coming through my headphones here. I just love talking to Janine. We always have a great time when we talk. So I definitely want to make sure that you connect with Janine. She just started her publishing company, Uncommon Universes. You can find that online at uncommonuniverses.com. And to get more information about Janine, visit her website at JanineIppolito.com. That's JanineIppolito.com. You definitely don't want to miss out on her writings. And then this book, Blood Mercy Thicker Than Water, it's going to be a hit. I already know that. Go ahead, pre-order your copy today on Amazon.com. You will not be disappointed. And if you enjoy her book, or if you just have some critique about it, leave a review. I tell you all the time, authors need reviews. It helps us breathe at night. We can sleep better at night when we have reviews. So go ahead and leave a review as well. It will be available this month. So go ahead, get your copy of Blood Mercy today. And then I want to let you all know again about the new shows coming on board on PJC Media Worldwide Network. The Marriage Book with coaches Eric and Fran Harrison, as well as Let's Talk About It with Jenny White. Those are coming up in November. Keep it right here for the best radio station in the land, WPJC 104.5. So glad about that. I want to also encourage you, those writers out there, you have this gift. God has given it to you. Why don't you go ahead and pick up the pen and write? Like Janine said earlier in her final thoughts, no matter how crazy the idea, go ahead and do it. You will never know where God can take your gift. So what are you waiting for? Pick up the pen and write stuff. Thanks so much for joining me for this edition of The Right Stuff. I am the queen of Tuesday nights, Parker J., and you have a wonderful, absolutely glorious, blessed day. Thank you for joining us for this edition of The Right Stuff. Follow Parker online at parkerjcole.com. To hear this show and other shows, visit the show archive at therightstuffradio.wordpress.com. We'll be back same time next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.